Welcome back, everybody, to another episode here on the Energy of the Untamed Heart podcast. I am your host, Mielle Fox. Today's guest is Judy Slater. She is an intuitive medical practitioner as well as an author of an amazing self workbook to help us define and get back to our place of who we really are at our core. And I love this. She's right up my alley. She's like a science geeky spiritual girl. So I'm really feeling like I'm aligned and in my element today. So I'm so excited to have a chat with Judy, talk about how did she go from chemistry and other forms of science into spirituality and what has driven her to go down the path that she's currently on. So without further ado, Judy, welcome to the show. Hello.
Thanks so much. And I think you summed it up well. It's been a curious journey.
I love that. And curiosity is truly the thing that leads us through the treasure hunt, is it not?
Yes, and life is a
Yeah.
treasure hunt.
I love that. I love it. So you and I are probably pretty darn close generationally as far as what did we do, what did we do, and what are we doing now? Um, I'm going to guess, but I'm going to let you fill in the blanks that you probably started out like I did, which is the path to whatever is get a career, go to school, get trained in XYZ, get the career, do the thing. And then lo and behold, we find out later, like, oh, isn't this interesting? It's a stepping stone to what I'm really supposed to be doing. Now
Yeah,
what?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and it's interesting because both of my parents were teachers, and in the 70s, there was, women were supposed to be secretaries or nurses or teachers. It's like I didn't want to do any of that. And I would thumb through the college catalog and think, okay, what can I do that doesn't involve teaching? And so I actually ended up doing a degree in microbiology and chemistry, but with a minor of music and dance to stay sane during the 18 hours of lab a week. And really, I did it because I had started having health issues and wanted to kind of learn more about that, and found out that the regular medical system didn't have the answers that I needed. So then I went to seminary. So I kind of went from physical healing and to kind of the spiritual healing. And then along the way, when I was seeing a doctor in his office, there was a magazine about Bastyr University, which is a naturopathic university. And I ended up doing a course in spirituality, health, and medicine, and it wove everything together. And then I continued on that path and then have found an Academy of Intuition Medicine. And to me, the world's language is energy. So that's the language that I speak now. And it all has really dovetailed and really explained a lot of things.
So fabulous. So fabulous. I'm listening to you and I'm like, oh my gosh, this could be me talking. So it's so interesting that you and I have very similar, I'm going to call it the weaving of all the things. So I come from a math and science background, and I am both very grounded in let's do the science and see what really is playing out here because I'm sort of like, so really tell me why. Oh, I really have to know, that I was the why child. Why? And I think those of us with a very high level of curiosity, that is sort of how we walk through the world is, well, why does this happen and why does that happen? So I, like you, started down the road in the science and mathematics realm. I cannot dance or do music. So I did not balance out very well in school. I did other things, but that wasn't one of them. But like you, I thought, well, this can't be all there is. Like there must be more to this than just this. This can't be it. And lo and behold, don't we find out that we're not really moving through the universe in Newtonian physics term anymore, which for people who are like, what the heck does that mean? It basically means like everything outside of you defines what goes on inside of you. The reality is that we're wandering through quantum physics, which is energy's everywhere and it's in a wave form. And that means that you don't have just one path. Like you could have a bajillion different paths. And how we choose or determine what path are we taking is based on all kinds of things, primarily our personal choices. So I love that you went down the road of combining the spirituality, leaning into the intuitive realm with your groundedness in the sciences to help people move forward with their health, their whole health. Not just like, oh, you got something wrong with your body. Here, let's give you the pill or let's give you the exercise, but let's treat you like a whole entire unit, a unit of physicalness and emotional and mental and spiritual, like the whole package.
Yeah.
So I'm just thrilled with that.
Well, and in my book, the Simply Self Wonderful Inner Workout book, I use the term MEPS to cover mental, emotional, physical, social, and spiritual. And we need to look at all of those. And there may be other ones, but that pretty much covers it. And being a science geek like you, I also really relied on creative expression, not a art, because that's what people think of when they think of it, but creativity and just looking at something in a new way or out of the box or a different perspective or using your likes and gifts and talents to explore something or create
Yeah.
something. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think at our deepest place, we are all creatives in
yeah.
some way,
Well,
however that is expressed.
yeah. And my one
Yeah.
of my probably my main statement is we're created to be creative. And it kind of goes
Yes.
back to that fundamental Christianity thing when you talk about, God created heaven and earth or whatever. And it's like, well, what is that? And we are co-creators in this universe. And you kind of talk about, and in quantum physics, that really kind of explains that concept. Your thoughts create your reality. Your thoughts and your actions and your choices create which which path you're going down. And it can be used as a guilt trip, but the more you kind of know it, the healthier it makes you become, because then you become aware of those thoughts. It's like, oh, that's not really helpful, let me switch it up a little bit. And so a lot of my clients, I do a lot of thought catching.
Yes.
Say, let's just shift this a little bit, or do you really want to say that to yourself or think that? um,
Yeah, I really feel strongly that the awareness that we
mhm.
can learn to develop is our first toe in the water of what is possible next. So it's it sounds very obvious, like duh, but how many of us move through the world and sometimes we're completely unaware of how much we are really the navigator of our own path.
Mhm.
Meaning we repeat patterns, we do
Yeah.
things almost, automatically without really considering why are we doing it, or do I even want to do this, or is this really the truth that this story I tell myself, or this phrase that keeps repeating. And when we start to understand and get some of the awareness, like, is it so, is it true, is it true for me, is it necessary, is this my choice, where is this coming from, just that one little piece, that one piece of awareness, I can be a complete life shifter for people.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
that's kind of how kids develop their personality. It's shaped by the influence of their parents and their caregivers and the school and the culture, all that. And so you end up being this kind of product that somebody else has created. And so my whole task is I want you to find the self wonderful you and get rid of all the mislabeled parts and pieces of you and really find your true self. Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I think as my personal perspective, of course, is that we're all divine sparks of love. We're souls in a human body, having a human experience here on earth for this given window of time, our lifetime, which in the big picture is about a blippity blip, but whatever that lifetime is for each of us. But we're borrowing our body for this ride.
I totally
And
agree. Yes.
yeah, and I think what occurs is, yeah, we're borrowing the body for the ride, but in the so doing, because we have to experience both our soul essence as well as our human portion, there needs to be a pretty good, hmm, we need to get along. Like we can't leave somebody on the curbside. You can't leave your body on the curbside, your heart on the curbside,
Yeah.
your mind on the curbside, your spirituality on the curbside. It's all interwoven as long as you're here on earth,
Yeah.
for
And that's
sure.
another one of my key phrases is that your relationship with yourself is the most important relationship that you will ever have. I don't remember ever hearing that growing
Mm-mm.
up, to
Mm-mm.
respect your body, to be responsible for your body, to be responsible for, the things that you put in it, that what you say to it, all of that, and so to me, that's such an important key phrase or idea to really integrate as we now, once we've kind of been through, the school age and the high school, and we get to that place where we're free to be ourselves, that's where that really comes into play.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I'm so glad to hear you say this. So I'm curious. I do have a curiosity question. So,
Mhm.
like you and I are both born in the 1900s, and then of course our current generation, many are born after 2000, of course, if you just do the math. And I do find that we were raised very much with things you don't talk about,
Yeah.
things you take for what's assumed. You're going to do X, Y, and Z, and this is the way it goes. And it almost seems until you get to a particular age where you realize, wow, I don't need to play the tape over again. Oh, I don't actually need to follow this path any longer. I'm a grown up and I can actually make a choice to do otherwise. And I see in our, well, I'm going to call them the younger generation because I've got a few years on those kids. I'm going to say that they reach that desire to discover or return back to who they really unravel all the stories and who they really are. That seems to occur at a different window of time for the younger generation as compared to your generation, my generation. Do you see that?
I definitely agree. In my generation, I watch people kind of raise their children in the same way that they were raised, and then realize about age 40 or so, it's like, I need to start doing the changing. And so they've already, passed it on to the next generation, all the stuff. But now in the mid 20s, early 30s, when people are starting to think about having children, they've already kind of done that switch to, I need to be the best parent I can be and know myself so that I don't pass that down to my children. And in the academy where I teach, it's mostly, yeah, 20 and 30 and maybe 40-year-olds. They're just really anxious and ready for more of that delving in, finding that true spirit that you were kind of talking about, that spark.
Yeah, I just find it really interesting, so much so that it makes me curious. So here you have, this generation who now in their 20s and 30s are seeking what you and I probably sought out in our 50s, honestly. It makes you curious. So now will the future generations, their children and their children's children, will they perhaps find their way, find their path, seek their purpose in a different, either in a different chronological window because things are changing from the parental and from the generational standpoint? Or is this just a different brushstroke on what everybody pretty much experiences if you're here on Earth?
Well, let's go back to the quantum physics perspective. We have shifted the world and the ethos and the energy of the world just by being in it. And I think one of
Mm,
the perfect examples is, how hard it was for us to deal with computers and all of that kind of stuff. And little kids these days, it's like they know how to do it. They're not really taught. It's just intuitive and instinctive. And I think that a lot of this stuff is in the energy field. And so people have earlier access to it.
yeah. And I think as we move forward, it'll probably be well beyond my lifetime, honestly. But I think this shift, if we extrapolate it and kind of expand it collectively, I think this is where there's going to be a global shift from, I'm going to say, working closer towards unity and connection moving forward versus where we are kind of now and where we were, which is kind of the independent separation zone of, oh, if you got to do it, you got to do it yourself, get going. And I definitely, I think things are a little on the spot chaotic at the moment, but that's change. You don't get change if you don't shake it up a little bit. But I do think maybe moving forward, that that goal of creating more connection, getting back to the fact that we're really all interwoven with each other's energy in some way, is going to be, I think, more openly accepted and accessible than even where it is currently.
Well, and I'm I have a long answer to that. I've been reading some of the work by Margaret Wheatley, and she's introduced the idea that civilizations last about 250 years. And I read this about 10 years ago, and so I've kind of been anticipating this period of time in history. And we pretty much are in collapse. And like you said, we need to collapse before the next thing comes in. And so what's really happening is there's so much fear in the world right now because of the climate change and all the shifts and negative stuff that's happening around us, that people are unable to access their cognitive brain. They're in their reptilian brain, which is just reactive. And so part of what she's talking about, and I'm in a program to create, are islands of sanity, where they offer spaces, and it doesn't necessarily have to be physical, but even like our conversation here today, where there's generosity and kindness and compassion, and allowing people to experience that, and then brings out those human qualities of kindness and generosity and compassion. And that shifts and allows them to go back into their higher brain for functioning. So that's kind of the trajectory or the mission that I'm on just in this particular time, is to begin to look at the world as it is, open up to it, and then find and offer that generosity and kindness. And
Absolutely,
that's shifting
because
the energy field, like you said.
it does. It sure
Yeah.
does, because the vibrational frequencies associated through generosity, compassion, kindness,
Yeah.
love, all
Yeah.
the things that we in the healing fields love to talk about, that that will work its way out, ripple out, spread out, individual by individual, one at a time if that's what it takes.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it will, like a wave, it will move its way out into the greater cosmos.
Yeah.
And by virtue of that, it will up level. It will up level everything.
Yeah.
I just think it's a little rocky at the moment, but you got
Right.
to start
Right.
somewhere. I mean, you
That's
got to
right.
start somewhere.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I love this.
Well, and
So
it's not,
tell,
sorry,
go
and
ahead.
it's not just hoping for the best. It's actually doing the action,
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
You can't just
Yeah.
dream it. You've got to bring it into reality.
Yeah. And I think what a great concept, or give me the phrase again, islands of
Sanity.
unity. Okay, I was about to say islands of compassion. Yeah, I think that's just so spot on. And it's a little bit of how to, I'm losing my word, but how to keep us in our harmonic side of our nervous system, how to
Yes.
re-regulate our
Yes.
nervous system is really what I'm trying to say,
Yes.
so that we can get out of our reptilian brain and so that we
Right.
can get into a better level of consciousness. Because honestly,
Yeah.
you cannot hear what you need to hear
Yeah.
if all you're hearing is your survival brain saying la 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 la.
Yeah.
You just can't hear anything. And so to be able to get quiet enough in the being to hear the messages.
Yeah. Well, and
Mm.
also we kind of haven't brought up trauma yet. And maybe,
Well, let's go there.
but
Let's do it.
as you're talking about regulating your physical system, there's so many just wellness practices as simple as the finger holds from Jinsen Jitsu or EFT
Yeah.
tapping, but anything that, even rocking motions, anything that can move that energy out of the body, because illness happens when energy gets stuck in your body. and energy likes to move. And so there's simple, easy ways to let it go. And so before the election, I did 3 months of exercises about, staying sane. And each one, every day was one of those kinds of exercises, just very simple. Because when you said some people, staying quiet, it's like, I'm a kinesthetic person. I need to move. And so that silent meditation stuff is just not for me. It's very
Oh, okay.
challenging.
So let me clarify, because like you, I'm a very type A, very busy, very active, very physically in motion kind of a person. My so I didn't say it very clearly, did I? So when I say being quiet, I don't mean like shh, be quiet. I mean allowing yourself to be present
Yes.
in whatever it is. I don't care if you're running a marathon, walking through the woods, dancing, playing the violin, knitting, whatever that is, when you can quiet your being to a place where it isn't jumbled and jarring and constantly chasing after multiple thoughts. I don't necessarily think you have to sit cross-legged on a cushion, but I do think there are physical activities that allow your energy to process and move, but also allow you to be present in your
Yes.
being,
Yeah.
that to really connect.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what I refer to as quieting the nervous system so that you
Yeah.
can
Okay. Yeah.
experience being present. I didn't say that very clearly.
Or I
Yeah.
may have just misinterpreted it, but and it's a both and. Again, there's really kind of the black and white dichotomies. They're not
Yeah.
really present in, there's so many nuances and so many ways to do things and look at things. So
Absolutely. And everything is different for every person.
yeah.
You know, I find my physical outlet, I live pretty rurally, so I can get out in nature a lot. And
Mhm.
I find that is extremely calming for me.
Yes.
It allows me to move energy, but it also allows me to stay grounded. Because here's the reality. Sure, I'm a soul in a human body. I get that, but I'm having a human experience. And so it doesn't do me any good to be woohoo up here all the time. I
Right.
need to I need to remain somewhat grounded and then create a balance point between what my soul speaks and what my physical body needs so that the two of them are not living in separate neighborhoods.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
you want to be experiencing the experience from your body and not from
Yes.
somewhere else. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So in writing your books, because and the people who are on audio can't see what I can see, but there's a
Oh.
beautiful image behind you for your workbook. What was your drive to set this workbook up in the way that you did?
Well, well, it's interesting because I never intended to write a book. I was working with a healer and she was saying things like, "Oh, you need some self-wonderfuls." And she kind of was saying you need some self-compassion and some self-acceptance and some of those kinds of things. And like what happens to me is I'll wake up one morning and the whole idea was there for a card deck because I didn't want to write a
Ah,
book. And so I kind of expanded on the term self-wonderful as those kinds of things like, again, self-appreciation, self-love, that sort of thing. But then I thought, but what about all the woundings that happen that then uh, take us to those growth places? And so I have 33 self-wonderfuls and 32 woundings, like self-hate, self-criticism, self-deprecation, self-torment, a bunch of those. And so I originally did that. And then when I made the card deck, it was like, nope, I have more to say. And so that's when I expanded what I wrote about each thing. I found quotes and I have some affirmations. And then back to that MEPS thing in the book, it has an activity to do in each of the areas: mental, emotional, social, physical, social, and spiritual. And then the cards all have mandalas on them. And so there's a page to color the mandala. So there's really over 500 activities on kind of getting to know yourself and celebrating the gifts of being uniquely you. And so luckily it happened during COVID. So I had a little more time and space to put it all together. But yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And it's so interesting how many of those activities really became, I'm going to say, necessary, more
Yeah,
so
yeah,
because of everything with COVID, people not being able to get out and socialize. And
right.
I think the trickle down effect of that is, of course, more anxiety, more difficulties, more time kind of in your head than not, and all the things. And so to have these various modalities to help, what a great time to create them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and so some of them are kind of in the cognitive brain, but like the card for self-portrait, has you do 5 different kind of self-portraits, but none of them are really portraits of yourself. Like one of them is a word cloud, and one of so they're all sorts of different things. And another one, it's like, do dress up and have fun. So there's a lot of joy and levity and playfulness in it, which is what I really hope for, because I
Yeah.
want your journey to be playful.
We are here for the joy and bliss. So
We are.
anything that allows us to express that, I think, is
Yeah,
absolutely, you know, that's just the cherry on the sundae.
it is.
So if people want to find your card deck, if people want to find your workbook, if people want to find you,
Okay.
what is the best way for people to find you?
So probably the easiest way is to find my card deck and book at simplyselfwonderful.com. And that is a part of my website, which is Interlude Coach. So INNER Lude Coach, going in. And then they're also on Amazon. But
Terrific.
my website has a lot about me, a lot of resources. And if you go, you can get a free download of one of the self-love mandala, and a couple other
Beautiful.
gifts on my website. So yeah,
Yeah, I love it. And I have to confess, love to color me a mandala. I've got a whole notebook of them because of
yeah,
course in 2020 I
yeah,
was really like, wow, I need something here.
right.
And it really helps tremendously, just so much.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you're such a joy to chat with.
You too.
Absolutely. I'm going to put all of the connections and support information in the show notes so we can get a hold of you. And the exercises that you describe, I just think they're so useful because they don't take a lot of time. They don't take a lot of dollar investment. They are portable.
Mhm.
And who doesn't want to lead a better life the easy way?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And I do building resilience workshops, and I say, healings in your own hands. And you're right, they're simple, 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes.
yeah.
That's all it takes.
But it all adds up.
Yeah, and you don't even have to go to the trauma or the issue. Your body just knows what to release. So that's the
Yeah.
lovely part too. Yeah.
It's fabulous. It's fabulous. I love this. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your exercises. And tell us the name one more time because I see the poster behind you. Give us the name of the workbook one more time.
Okay. The website is simplyselfwonderful.com. And the workbook is the Simply Self Wonderful Inner Workout Book. And then the card deck is the Simply Self Wonderful card deck. So actually, my challenge to the listeners is just to start saying to yourself, I am simply self wonderful. And that's the exercise of the day, every
I
day,
love it.
many
I
times
love
a
it.
day.
Oh my gosh. It's so beautiful. Judy, thank you. Thank you for taking the time. This has been super helpful, and I'm sure other people are going to find it as enjoyable as I am. Thank you for your time.
It was a pleasure. Thanks so much, Miel.
Absolutely. We will talk again soon, I am sure.
Yes.